So last week, those of us in the retro gaming community were by and large surprised and a bit upset by a video that came out by Carl Jobst, a YouTuber, who did a deep dive into what he claims is a brewing scandal between Wata Games, the game grading company that sprung up a couple years ago, and Heritage Auctions. And the claim is that these two entities are manipulating the prices of retro video games, particularly sealed, graded retro video games. And it's very convincing piece. And there were two much longer articles about this by someone named Seth Abramson that came out on Substack. I'll link to all of that below. But this is something that was kind of piqued my interest and is kind of right in my wheelhouse, and I wanted to come on and just give my reactions to it. These are long articles. It's a long watch, this YouTube video that I'm referencing, but I'll just summarize some of the key points. So basically, start off by discussing the fact that sealed video game prices are increasing unrealistically. The fact that Super Mario game sold for $1.5 million is shocking, the N64 game. The claim is that the principles behind Wata grading and Heritage Auctions are working together to manipulate the market, the prices of these games, by internally generating sales records which get reported to the media. And this happens in a lot of ways, whether they're kind of bidding on their own items, buying their own items, trading in between each other. But media is reporting this as accurate, legitimate sales data. This creates demand. And I've seen this actually with the fact that people I know, oh, hey, you like video games? Guess what? They're super valuable now. So when you create that mind share in the public, they profit because auction houses profit with the higher priced items being sold, and grading companies make tons of money off of people sending in their sealed games. And so these two entities have the most to gain from an inflated collectibles market. And the final point, and most interesting point, is that the same players, according to the video, were responsible for a pump and dump in the collectible coin market in the 1980s, which led to a crash from which that market has never recovered. So the immediate question that came to my mind is, at what point does wanting to make money off of video games become destructive to the retro gaming community as a whole? So I think a lot of us have tried to answer this question, and a lot of voices in the retro gaming community have come out. Some of them were actually in that Carl Jobst video. But I detect here a little bit of a kind of disingenuous slant. I will say that this behavior by Wata is reprehensible, possibly criminal, and this is something that does have the potential to destroy the hobby. And again, it's not just for sealed games. I think this is going to affect prices for all games. But on the other hand, I sense that a lot of the personalities that have come out against this vocally, I mean, on the one hand, they're doing a service. On the other hand, though, I detect a bit of jealousy here. These people, and you'll see who all these people are, but sort of some of the luminaries of the YouTube scene are actually being eclipsed as market makers by people who have way more money than they do. And I think you can't look beyond the fact that, the YouTube community, the kind of big personalities, were essentially market makers. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. I think we've discovered a lot of great games through their work. But, now this other group, sort of investment Wall Street types, have come in, and, they're making a market far beyond anything that the circle of YouTube influence could have generated. And in so doing, they are perfectly happy with taking their profits and crashing it for the rest of us. So that's a kind of market-making power that no one has on YouTube, and it's a power against which we really have no immediate defense. But again, in some of these arguments, from what I've heard and what I've read in comments and things like that, the suggestion is that we, the gamers, collect the games to play them, and anyone who's trying to make money in this market is misguided. I kind of take a middle road. We don't want Wata doing what they're doing, but I think it's incredibly dangerous precisely because I think many of us have a reasonable expectation of some kind of appreciation. And I'm not just talking about retro game collectors, but I think if you engage in any type of hobbyist collecting seriously, you do so because you love the product, you enjoy the hunt, you like the community, and there's a sense that your collection will appreciate in value at a reasonable rate. What Wata's doing is trying to extract every bit of value they can from the market, crash it, and leave us holding the bags, as it were. So I wouldn't want to cast it in such a black and white term and say, oh, anyone who's trying to make money is collecting for the wrong reasons. I think it's part and parcel of being a collector, and I think precisely because of that, we need to call Wata out and defend against that. So on the question of will there be a market crash, I think these articles in this video, they all make a very strong case for the fact that there will be a crash. And honestly, I think it is coming, although I'm not convinced it's going to be as dramatic as we may fear. And the reasons why we may have a crash are because these players have done it before. This Heritage Auctions guy has affected the coin market. The same kind of business relationships have negatively affected a lot of different collectibles. That connection between auction houses and grading companies is kind of a dangerous model for a lot of collectibles. And I think once we see a steep decline in prices, or we see that a year from now, Mario 64 in sealed condition, graded, can be had for $50, that will create a lot of negative press, and that will change the minds of a lot of casual observers to say, oh, okay, that was crazy. These video game collectors are nuts. Video games have no value. People will sell them off. Prices will fall. And I think even beyond that, if it doesn't get that bad, I do think a correction is coming anyway. After COVID, I think we're starting to see it. But that natural correction, plus a lot of negative press from these guys crashing the market, could accelerate things. But I do have a certain degree of optimism when it comes to retro gaming, because I think retro gaming will be more resilient than coins or baseball cards. And I think there are two main reasons for that. I think, first of all, these are usable artifacts of technology. We can still take the NES card and play it, either on a real NES or some of the new FPGA solutions that are coming out now. So unlike a coin, I can purchase and use video games. Now, obviously, we're talking about Wata manipulating the sealed games market and that kind of trickling down if there is a crash to other games. But I think as far as used games in decent condition, I think people will still want to play them. Great games will remain great games. And that is something that very few collectibles offer. Even comic books, you're not going to crack open that 1940s Batman comic book and read it. You might read a scan or a reproduction, but you're not going to use that object. You can still use video games. And I think connected to that, and the second reason, is the influence effect. Video games are the first collectible that have appreciated in value within the sphere of social media. And the same people who were out there praising games in 2008 and 2015 and 2018 and now, they will continue their work, hopefully, and their work will be out there for future generations to access. So we're still going to have a whole bunch of people in a free or close to free medium saying, hey, look, these are wonderful games. Search this one out. This is rare. This is unique. Um, and that will continue to feed the nostalgia that we have. And by we, I mean here collectors in sort of from their late 20s to late 40s. And I think newer generations, will be able to access that. Now, whether they'll want the physical media or not, that's a question. But I think the influence effect is real, and it will kind of sustain things to a certain degree, and the crash won't be so bad. So I want to circle back to the point about, we are powerless against these market makers. I think in a real sense, in a financial sense, we are. But I do think we should ask the question, can we resist Wata? Can we resist the mentality that they're bringing to the hobby? Now, again, if we're going to treat video games as an asset class, these people have very quickly cornered the market on video games as an asset class. But I think we can promote and contribute the kind of reporting that brought this story to light. And while I might have had a slightly different approach to some of the voices in the Carl Jobst video, I think the work that was done there was positive. And I think gaming has proven that we're a very kind of activist fan base. And think about all of the different issues that have cropped up over the years where companies have actually changed their behavior because of the complaints of gamers. So I think we should promote that kind of reporting and contribute to it if we're in a position to do that, and kind of get the word out to the media and say, hey, look, this is what's going on. These games really are not super rare. So I think what's happened in the last week is overall a positive for the community. I think also we should not send our games to get graded. I've spoken to a few people who are like, well, I have some sealed games, maybe I'll send it to Wata and test my luck. I mean, I think, I've been tempted to do that too. I have some sealed games that seem to be relatively valuable, but I'm personally not going to do that. And then I think, we can consciously choose not to buy sealed games on the secondhand market. It's one thing if you buy it from Amazon and don't get around to it or something like that, as happens with me. It's another thing to go out and pay a premium for sealed games on eBay or Mercari. But I want to leave us with a wild card and a pipe dream. So the wild card to me is this. The interview subjects in the Jobst video all advocate for the publication of population reports. This is a way to kind of correct the market, make it more rational, and Wata should do this, but of course Wata has no financial incentive to do this. The companies that made the games, however, they surely have sales records, historical sales records, and they could, if they wanted to, publish sales records for these games. How many did they produce? How many did they sell? And I think as a fan base, we should insist upon this as a service. Now, you could imagine if, say, a company like Atlas put out a book, the history of Atlas, gave us some screenshots, art, a little blurb about each game, and in that said, hey, we sold 100,000 copies of Persona 2 on the PlayStation 1 in the United States. I think if enough companies did that, we'd be able to determine what games are truly rare and at the same time very good. And then we may have a basis for value there. It's a wild card. It's not impossible. It's not too difficult to do. It would probably involve someone in accounting clicking through some records. I just don't think that that is in the consciousness of these game companies. And here's a pipe dream. The grading industry as a whole, not just in gaming, but in baseball cards, coins, and so forth, to me, it's one of those industries that's ripe for disruption. It's a slow, subjective act of human labor and interpretation. And if there were a way to use technology to establish both the condition and the authenticity of an item in a more efficient and seamless manner, we could actually eliminate the corruption that grading invites. I don't know the particular mix of technologies to do that, but it seems like that would be the death blow to the kind of manipulation we're seeing with Wata games. So let me know what you think. Let me know how you guys think this will end. I look forward to reading the comments.